Welcome to Lat B, the only podcast that comes with a free Bandits bonus.
Express delivery included.
Lat B, where MMA and UFC get silly. This is the Lat B podcast.
Welcome back, episode 205. We're going to Rochester, New York for this one. Another week of fights on the way, a weekend of fights on the way. We're going to get the first break after this that we've had in a while, so be sure to get as many bets as you can because next weekend you ain't going to have no fights. You ain't going to have nothing to bet on.
Just one weekend or is it three?
I believe it's just one. I could be wrong on that, but I do believe it's just one. Whew. The schedule
Seems like it's so far away.
Schedule was just released for the second part of the UFC calendar. 22 cards in the next 26 months.
22 cards in the next 26 months?
That's rough. Yeah. We ain't going to get too much time off, so be sure to keep those gifts coming to all the ladies. Whatever weekends you do got off, you got to devote to them because it's been rough. It's been rough for the last couple weeks if you have a significant other. If not, and you're just a degenerate loving and watching.
June 8th is Cejudo Moraes.
Love it. That's a fun one.
That's the next one after this fight.
Right, but that's a week off in between.
No, from May 18th all the way to June 8th.
Oh, is that 2 weeks? Ooh, almost 3 weeks?
Maybe a month.
No way.
4 weeks?
3 weeks. Wow, 21 days. That's a punch to the gut. Luckily, we have a 13-card bout. That's going to come out of New York. But before we get into all that, not only did the UFC officially let out its 22 bouts in the next 6 months, but there was a absolute shit ton of fights that have been profiled. We talked about some of the main ones. Cerrone versus Ferguson is official. Pettis versus... Who did he just sign up with?
No one?
Diaz. At 170
that
pounds.
official?
That's official. But Nate Diaz is one of these guys that, even with the bout signed, he's falling. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean shit. So, until he's like in fight week, until he shows up to whatever mandated things he has to, you just kind of can't officially call that.
Have they fought each other before?
I think it's been a long time coming and they have not yet.
All right, well, that's a super fight.
It's a fresh
fight. For all intents and purposes, that's a super fight. Those are two guys that have been in the sport forever. It's a perfect fight for both, dude. I feel like they're about equally ranked in the 155, even if they fight at 170. Like I think that's a good fight for both dudes. Doodah. That makes me excited if that happens for both dudes. Because Pettis is a guy that there's few matches where I'm always going to have him the underdog, but that one where I'm like, oh, that's a good fight for Pettis. Good for him. I know he just beat Thompson, but the last person Thompson beat was Darren Till, and Darren Till's on a losing streak.
Well, and he lost to Darren Till.
I know. I was just being harsh.
That was a good one.
I was just being harsh because that was hometown. But
the truth. So the other one that's supposedly
it's a big fight announcement week.
That has been big. The biggest one where everybody's a little upset about is Frankie Edgar officially getting the fight with Max Holloway after Volkanovski's last performance against Jose Aldo in Brazil. A lot of people thought that he should be the first one to get the shot at Max, and now they got Edgar coming in at 145 pounds. This is going to be his third or fourth title attempt.
I was one who I thought Volkanovski should have to fight Moicano Ortega, Brian Ortega.
I still don't agree with that.
Looks like the UFC agrees.
Yeah, well, they got Frankie Edgar.
But no, I just thought so. And for real, Frankie's wanted the title shot against Max, and it's fallen out a few times. That I'm just kind of okay with the pacification of Frankie right here. And he's one of the legends that kind of deserves, like Daniel Cormier with the Brock fight. If he wants it, we'll get it for him. If it all works out, we'll try to help it work out, kind of thing. That's how I feel with Frankie. If he wants it, let's give Frankie this shot right here. And sad part is, I don't know if it'll come back. I don't know if he'll get back there to fight the next champion, but Frankie will become one of those guys that it'll be a really hard pass for him to get back to this point.
I totally agree. He's been in it forever.
This is supposed to happen before. Like, I feel like I've seen the Max Edgar poster.
People have been talking it for a long time. One of those biggest proponents has been...
Did it fall out?
I'm not sure if it fell out. I think maybe Frankie might have had an injury at some point in time. I don't know if Max had the belt or if it was in between.
That's why it ended up being Aldo too.
I think you're right there as well. I do think it was an Edgar issue, but the biggest proponent from all people on all sides has been Ali Abdelaziz. He's come out and actually been very vocal about how, hey, Frankie did a favor against Ortega. He came up short and lost, but they promised him he would still get a title fight. And, we scratched their back, they scratch ours type of a situation. How do you feel about that being in the background of all of this?
I mean, if he's getting his guys money, that's what it's all about. Is he a better... it hurts me to say. Everybody knows how I felt about Ali Abdelaziz. But if he's getting his dudes money and he's becoming a powerful enough entity to get... I can't be mad at a guy getting money for... It's like, oh, are you better for UFC fighters than anyone else? Is he actually the biggest... He's
proving to be so. I mean, look at how many champions.
I can't hate on that. So, tip of the hat. Hashtag tip of the hat to Ali Abdelaziz. I like him getting the guys money and getting his guys fights. Usman, it would have taken that guy forever. Could he have possibly had it any harder to get to the... And the bummer thing about Usman is that was Colby's fight. And that was pretty much the direct route that Colby would have had.
And would have done possibly the same thing.
Pretty much. It's very interesting. But Colby might not be as good as Usman. Or does Colby do that to Usman?
No. I think that's much more of a coin flip where Colby does do that to T-Wood, though. I would have had that same bet that I had on Usman.
It definitely makes it a more interesting fight coming around.
170. Sure. 170, interesting division. Very interesting all of a sudden.
Just a hop skip. Like, we'll just jump over here. Lily pads. Boom. Yeah, 170
is it started with Pettis, Diaz, because they're 170 pounders. Askren's in there. We got Robbie Lawler, Woodley coming back up again.
I love the way Woodley didn't gripe and moan and blah, blah, blah. He was just like, okay.
Next.
Taking a lump. I love the way Robbie wasn't like, rematch. No, I only want to do a rematch with Askren. Blah, blah, blah. If that's not a money fight for either of those guys, let them both move on, everyone. Like, it's just a different day in MMA.
Great point. I think we leave that at that. In the Twitterverse, any other information that you want to get into before we get into this 13-card bat that's had twists and turns? One more big fight. There was more than one more big. There was multiple.
What are the other big fight news?
Let's see here. I'm gonna have to.
There was another huge fight. Tony Ferguson, Cowboy Cerrone.
Yeah, we officially talked about that though.
We have to talk about it every week.
Yeah, until it's come on. Did you guys know Cowboy Cerrone, Tony Ferguson's on the books?
I can't even believe that.
I agree. Crossing our fingers, we get there. That's got to be number one contender status as well, right? Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it at 155. Whoever wins that fight fights Khabib next.
I don't think... Or Dustin Poirier.
Damn it! Yeah, it's Dustin, right?
Dustin fights
he has
Khabib.
The belt. Yeah.
Yeah, so but it's gonna be their heel schedule will be fine because they're saying that Khabib Dustin will happen in maybe like September and Sri Lanka, maybe? I don't know why I'm saying that. I could be making that up.
I love that prediction.
I could be making that up
That's out of left
but
field.
I feel like I totally heard it somewhere.
Whoa.
Somewhere weird. Somewhere, like, one of their world exclusive events that's going to be, like, a huge thing. I don't know. I could totally be making that place up.
Let me coming in with some hot gossip, because that is deep.
I feel like September.
That's dope.
I'm not making it up at all. I heard that somewhere.
I believe it. Yeah. I believe it. I can't wait to see that one regardless. All that division, all those divisions, mix them all in together, throw out a 165-pound belt, and it's going to be even more fun. So the fact that they're not doing 165 just doesn't make any sense because, as we're saying, Pettis and Diaz could both be 165ers, and boom, there you go, your interim champ right there. And
it's
everybody
perfect.
else.
So then the winner of that will fight Tony versus Cowboy.
Exactly.
And I think it's the other awesome thing is all this no mention of Conor. And Pettis taking this fight with Diaz, both, for all intents and purposes, in the top 10 of UFC names. Neither guy are Conor McGregor, but both have very huge names in their own right, especially as far as UFC standard stars are concerned. So I just feel like almost the division moving on is the fuck you to him.
I totally agree.
I think it's great. I just kind of love this. I love that the division isn't, like, we're all not holding up waiting to see what's going to happen with Conor. So, anyway, yeah.
So, we get into a fun weekend. We're going to have an early fight night starting 5 p.m. on the East Coast out of Rochester, New York. If there's something to remember about New York, is that it is the youngest commission in the continental United States. I mean, Canada's got an older commission than them as well. And we've notoriously seen really interesting bouts come about. I feel like Adelaide Bird tends to make an appearance in either New York or Vegas. So just something that we gotta pay attention to because it does matter. I feel like we eventually come back on these morning afters and we're like, hey, there was some shithole judging or there's fines. There's really crazy fines, really interesting things. John Jones himself said he's never fighting in New York again.
Yeah, you're right about everything with the commission of New York, the judging of New York. We always see some fresh judge that we're like, who is that guy? Why is he in there on the main event? And then you see Herb Dean, like, ref 4-5 fights where you're like, oh, that's exhausting.
But before we even get into the commission, or before we even get into the fight weekend, we already had some bouts fall out with Vincent Luque, fan favorite here, from Latvia, against Neil Magny falling out. Initially it was saying Magny injury, but Neil Magny has come out and said himself that USADA notified him on May 11th that he has some flag in his system, so therefore he can not fight, and he's openly saying that he didn't take anything willingly. And I do feel like a lot of these guys that say the willing defense, sometimes it is that tainted supplement that they can find. It was on the approved list, but it's really hard for me to believe even these guys now because most of them are Yoel Romero's, Bohachina, not Bohachina, he was an IV. Who are the other? There's a lot of guys that are tainted meat, horse meat, tainted inhaler juice. So, Neil Magny, I didn't think you were that type of guy. I hope it was a tainted supplement, but even then, I don't know if I fully believe it. What do you think about this whole situation at 170 pounds?
I don't know enough about the banned substances. Like, I know the list is extraordinary. Everybody always says how long it is. I haven't done enough research on it, but I also haven't done any research on how many substances that everybody knows aren't banned.
Right.
Like, I haven't done any research on people are like, so the trick is you have your IV bag ready so you poke yourself the second you piss. And then you just, before you even leave the bathroom, you give yourself your IV bags. Like, whatever. People, like, I just, and what's in them, we don't, like, well, if we
there's tricky ways. There's tricky ways. I've looked into some of this because I need fun stuff to write about in some of my classes. So I talk about MMA, so it makes me look into it. There's funny ways you can take an IV, and I'm sure you know, in the top of the hand, inside of the thigh, there's some big veins in the groin area that you can use. So when people just automatically think, oh, they put it in your arm, not necessarily. There's many ways to bake a pie, as they say.
Yeah, a little phlebotomy tip.
Exactly. Exactly. All sorts of issues.
Butterfly the hand.
But
that's how I do it.
I think that's the best way to do it.
Top of my hand.
Definitely. But if you want to
my EPOs, I only go through the top of my hand.
You got to conceal it. You're going to do it somewhere where it's not visible. It's just kind of where I'm
going. I know everybody I just think it's the butt cheek. That's where everybody, you see everything stabbed. Like anything that can just be muscle.
Slow release.
Boom.
But water you want in a vein. Or saline solution, whatever it may be. But that's besides all of that. So Neil Magny is officially off on about 4 or 5 days notice. And we have a short notice replacement in D-Rock. But we'll end up getting there. We'll end up getting into that tenured veterans long voyage to the UFC. You know how we like to do here. We start all the way from the bottom, get all the way to the top. It stayed a whole 13 bouts, and if you ain't liking and subscribing, you're going to be missing out because There's going to be some money to be made. It is a tough one, though, as far as lines. I feel like these lines have been a kind of blown out on both sides of it. There is underdogs on the night, and we're going to make some money. At 145 pounds, we start off the night with two veterans in Julio Arce coming in against Julian Juicy J Erosas. This is one of those cardinal rules that here at Lat B, we usually tell you to stay away from the first fight of the night, and with these guys, I don't necessarily think we have to. Usually we tend to stay away is because there's a debut fighter, maybe both are debuting, and or limited experience, and both of these guys have tons of experience. Juicy J coming off of the Ultimate Fighter House, getting a win in there, but ultimately being submitted a few times. He's had a speckled record throughout his career with a 22-7 record. Erosas has lost 2 in a row. He got a 3-fight winning streak in there, but lost to Smith via TKO, and then lately, 2 months, 6 days ago, he lost to Grant Dawson in a decision, and it's perennially been a gas tank for Erosas, a sketchy chin. But as far as the fundamentals, stays good on the outside, has good low kicks, has gone to that calf kick better. On the ground, super sneaky, but at times he can just lose the transition and get out positioned. He's not necessarily in danger of being submitted as much, but he will lose a 3-round decision just from being on bottom more than his opponent. With one of the biggest issues, as we say here, stay away from the first fight of the night. A reason we like to stay away from Julian Erosas here is because he's a Michelin star chef. He does take time off, but he is a full-time chef. He's one of these guys that has fully never put all of his ducks in the row or both feet in the water. He's always just been a part-timer, and he has competed for a long time here, but I do think that it's all catching up to him. He's 29 years old. It's still just a hobby. His true career is cooking. So I think eventually this is going to be the fight to get his paperwork on out of here, and he's going to turn more into that. He probably will roll on the side, but I do think that Arce, 15-3, is coming off of a loss in the UFC against Sergio Moraes in a split decision. Moraes there picked him apart at distance on the ground, had Arce in a little bit of trouble. But prior to that, Arce beat Teimura. He went on a little streak in there, beating Peter Pettis on the Contender Series and also beating Dan Ige, a decision. Arce has a good gas tank, jack of all trades, master of none. Little bit of power. He is more of a looping striker, but his gas tank is held up overall. He can submit you as well, but I'm not worried about that with Erosas. I am seeing super overinflated line here. The fact that he's a minus 700 is just way too much. Erosas is a live dog in there just because it can get to a dirty split decision. I could definitely see it there. Erosas has a sketchier chin, but I don't think he gets put out. I see Arce decision, but for that big of a favorite, it makes no sense at all. This is going to be one of those classic stayaways, even on DraftKings, because you're going to end up paying $9,600 for Arce against $6,600 Erosas. As far as DK, this is dog or pass, because I see a decision, and for $6,600, I think he scores over that 45 points.
I'm so confused. I feel like real MMA fans understand what's happening, but the lines are completely off. I don't understand how Erosas is such a heavy favorite.
Oh, he's not. That line's off on Tapology. Look at this.
Oh
this is
gosh.
the actual line here. Minus 700.
Okay, I was like, what's going on in the real world that MMA fans see it completely different? Because I agree with the MMA fans. I agree with the line. I mean, it's way, way inflated, but maybe also what everyone's saying they see, you see as well. That it's a definite win. It's just how it's going to be, and you see it going to decision. So if he's a favorite that he's 700, which will also be the most expensive guy on DraftKings, do you see him laying out that many points at all, even close?
He has to get a first-round finish, and I don't necessarily see that happening.
We have also found that guys could get second or third round finishes if they're a guy that throws a lot of punches, but you don't see him doing that.
Arce does have a good output. He does have good boxing as well in there, but I think Juicy J uses a lot of lateral movement. He uses a lot of that cage and gets guys to chase him in there at times. He's long and uses a good teep kick to keep you off, but eventually he can get taken down. So I think Arce eventually gets him to the ground, and Arce doesn't throw a lot of pitter-patter shots. He'll throw some ground and pound, but he'll be more of a position guy as well. So I just see this turning into more of a ground Arce being on top more so. Erosa's giving up the bottom. He'll throw up triangles and stuff, but it's low percentage moves he's throwing out there. And usually by that time, Erosa's gotten a little beat up. So yeah, I don't think he pays it off. 9,600. Are you gonna put Arce anywhere?
No, nowhere. I think this fight is a lap B rule. Stay away.
Definitely stay away. At 185 pounds, we have Trevin Giles coming back in against Zach Cummings. These guys have both had a bit of a record in the UFC. 22-6. Zach Cummings has been a bit speckled in there, last beating Trevor Smith. Prior to that, losing to Prajeris. Tractor himself, getting it done in there. The EPO freak, the steroid freak got him. But Zach Cummings did start to look really old in that fight. Even though he beat Trevor Smith, which I've tended to fade it for a long time now. A win over Nathan Coy, who's no longer in the UFC, and beating Yokolev over 2 years ago. Cummings has just had lifelong wrestler, been hurt, come back from injuries. I do think he might have had a bit of a suspension in there for, I don't know if it was substance or not, but he's already had 3 or 4 fights since then. Either way, Cummings likes to get it to the ground, likes to be on top, and throws a lot of punches. Once he gets on top positionally, he's strong in the hits, but that's really not looked good as of late. Prazeres coming in, what was it, like 5-6 pounds overweight on that, really showed how his muscle mass ended up taking over and just his physicality ended up really wearing on Zach Cummings. And I think that that's a trend we're going to keep seeing forward because Trevor Smith isn't that good, and Trevor Smith had spots in there where he looked good. But against Trevin Giles, 11-0, he's got 2 fights in the UFC now, beating James Blachowicz, and who was his last person he beat? Jeto Nata, Brazilian JJ. The LFA champion also beat Ryan Spann, notably in a split decision. But what I have found out about Giles, he's taken a little bit of a break since his last fight, is that he specifically devoted this last year to the academy, and he's becoming a police officer, and I believe he recently graduated and now is having a fight while he's doing this. So this is just like one of those Juicy J situations where at 34 years old, he's looking at things past fighting. This is a hobby for him. He's good at it because he's physical. At
Wait,
the
who's 34?
Both of the... Zach Cummings is 34. I thought... Interesting. Trevin Giles... I thought Trevin Giles was older. I thought he was 34 years old. I don't know why I'm saying that. He's 26 years old. At least that's what it says on tap. But either way, he's at the academy.
Yeah, doing something else, not devoting the full time.
That's exactly it. I don't know if he was even nursing an injury in there, and maybe that's why he was taking time.
I just thought all of a sudden, I wasn't even trying to second guess. I just thought you were all of a sudden talking about Zach Cummings being in
you're right.
Police Academy, and I was like, what?
No, you're right. I got it confused in there. But Trevin Giles, again, is multi-dabbling in there, and you see that he has an exit route, which good for him. Definitely good for him. But at this high level, it's rough in there. He has a semi-serviceable gas tank. It's heart. Trevin Giles in there has heart. He's always trying to take your head off. He has actually a great left hook. Straight right comes over heavy, a little bit looping. But really where Trevin Giles, I see hurt most people is blitzing him and throwing almost that Roy Jones jumping hook, and then he'll just swarm you up against the cage, try to get a takedown. And on the ground, he's serviceable, but not making any big leaps and bounds from the fights we've seen. So against Neto JJ, that was a heart come through win. Zach Cummings can push him there, but Zach Cummings can get hurt on the way in. Zach Cummings will likely eat a shot in order to try to get a takedown. And Giles, as much as he has a good left hook, he has a great uppercut as well. He has I know I might be getting too big for my britches here, but saying a Mike Tyson-esque type of a uppercut where he'll bob that Cus D'Amato swivel and throw it like a piston up, and it hurts people. So I do see Giles potentially being able to beat Cummings to the punch there. And I am going to go, I had decision earlier, but I do think that I'm fading more Cummings than anything. But this is also one of those Lat B rules with the Police Academy stuff that I'm not going to play heavy on Giles. I know he's a favorite, a slight favorite for a reason. I'm going to be tentative on this fight in general because I'm fading Cummings, but I'm also fading Giles. Maybe not this fight, but later on, depending on where he goes. Who's the other police officer in the UFC? that you can think of right now?
It's a lady, right?
It is the Iron Lady,
Yeah.
Jermaine Dirandami. So, how you ever feel about that? Just take note. How do you feel about this one? I got Giles finished round number 3.
I'm going to stay away from this fight, too. I have Giles' decision. I don't know if I picture him doing what Pereira's did. But Trevor Smith, like you're saying, Trevor Smith kind of reminds me of, like, Ben Saunders. He's just a guy that is just doesn't represent a lot of strength. And I don't know. I want to fade Zach Cummings. His body looked bad last fight. I just don't know if I know enough about Trevin Giles. It's just his fights are not nearly on the same level as the guys that Zach Cummings. And Zach Cummings has been to decision with guys like Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Did he win or lose that one?
He lost it, but even making it there, it doesn't make me feel like Trevin Giles is of Pereira's or Ponzinibbio levels. And that's the kind of levels of the guys Zach Cummings loses to. Ugh. I think the lines are right on this, though. I'm going to go with Cummings' decision. I want to look at him at weigh-ins. I have to see some more muscle definition than last time. Even though he won his fight against Zach Cummings, I just think Trevin Giles should come in stronger, but he might not have the cardio, like you're saying, the same as a guy who's just in there all the time.
Totally agree with that.
Zach Cummings is a grinder. I'm going to go with Zach Cummings' decision. I think this is going to be a low-scoring fight. And if I'm forced to put I'm guessing Zach Cummings is an underdog. Yeah.
He is plus 120, minus 150 for Giles.
How much is he on the DraftKings?
DraftKings, you're going to get Giles at 8,400 against Zach Cummings, 7,800. That's pretty close lines, even on DraftKings. I think the higher ceiling there is Giles for me. The guy who gets the knockout. I agree. Zach Cummings gets the decision, but doesn't necessarily get the finish. But he could also completely gas out Giles and in the third round get that submission. Oh, this is a dirty ass fight. This is a dirty fight for all the wrong reasons. It's that age, that body of Cummings on top of the work and the outside curriculum.
The last time that Zach Cummings got knocked out, I don't see a knockout on his record. I don't know if Zach Cummings has ever been knocked out. He's been choked out. Okay. Nope,
that's a decision over Ryan Jimmo, who's a heavyweight.
Decision. He
was choked out in there
I don't know. If you think Giles could fade, he has to win 2 rounds of the 3. I think Zach Cummings might be one of those very few dudes that hasn't been knocked out in the UFC. I think he's a safe little underdog right now as far as I'm looking at on your... Gosh, 7-8, that doesn't seem right with an 8-4. He should be less to me. It's weird. I feel like they've upped their prices of lately for fighters.
Like I'm saying, some of these lines are a little bit weird on DraftKings. Making my lineups were definitely a bit difficult, and I had to take some bigger underdogs in here.
I see
Cummings
what you're
being
saying.
one of them.
Zach Cummings fits into those guys like Ben Saunders and like who were we just talking about that he beat? Trevor Smith. Like he fits in that genre of dudes. Like you just want to be like bald dude, losing step. I mean, just throw him over. But I think Zach Cummings still has some grind left in him.
Definitely, and that one could be a dirty split any day of the week as well. Moving on to the next one, we're not going to get any better at light heavyweight, 205 pounds.
Speaking of...
Patrick Cummings coming in against Ed Herman. Wow. If the last one was rough to break down, this one definitely is as well. At 22-14, Ed Herman is a longtime Team Quest veteran. He's been over there for a long time in California, up in the north part. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. Last losing to Krylov. Then who else did he lose to here? CB Dalloway and Gian Vellante in a split decision. Ed Herman at 38 years old. Ed's chin was one of his biggest attributes. He had hard right hand, piston, actually throws it well down the middle. He kind of paws away that first hand. He'll do that Muay Thai trap where he'll grab your front hand, push it down, and then hit you with that right down the middle. But he's really started to lose speed in that punch as much as in his chin. It's also been a little bit iffy. His takedown defense was serviceable at times, but as of late, it's been looking really, really bad. He really tries to use that fence, and even then, people have been using single legs to eventually drag him down. Off of his back, Ed Herman has a couple explosions, but eventually he just gives up position. And against Cummings, that's something you can't afford to do. The heavy wrestler came in against DC with a long time wrestling background. He's been able to get it going against a few guys, but his chin as well has been iffy at best. There's been many fights where Zach Cummings is bleeding from every orifice of his body, and he's just shooting a double leg takedown because he knows if he makes it out of the round, he wins a decision. So, gotta be tentative on Cummings because, that again, these guys, anybody could be throwing a spinning anything kind of a fist or kick in here, and either guy can go completely out. But I do think that Cummings at 38 years, 38, are they both 38? Jeez. Off a 2-fight losing streak, he's 10-6. He last lost to Corey Anderson where he got ground into oblivion, and last losing to Misha Shurkinov in a submission. That's iffy because Shurkinov also has no power. So Cummings never been traditionally the best or the heaviest striker in there. Ed Herman does have an advantage striking, but the wrestling I do think takes over. I think that it's a takedown heavy type of game plan, but I think it only goes 1 to 5 takedowns in the entire fight because I don't think Ed Herman gets up once Cummings gets him down. Puncher's chance in here. I'm going to stay away from this one because this is dirty, and there's no way Patrick Cummings can be a plus 200 against anybody. Give me Cummings' decision in here. Big fat stay away. What do you have on this one?
I got Patrick Cummings' decision as well. I think this is a loser leaves town.
I could totally agree with that.
Why do you need two 38-year-olds? Oh, that's shit for me to say. But both guys is kind of in that same basket of dudes that we were just talking about. Those Trevor Smiths, those Ben Saunders, of guys that you're just losing faith in. Yeah, I got Cummings' decision as well, and I don't really have anything else to add. It's almost like the beginning of this card is let's put all our underdogs against each other.
Man, it is. Yeah, I totally can see that. On DraftKings, you're going to end up paying $8,800 for Cummings against Ed Herman, $7,400.
I don't think
neither guy, right?
I agree with you.
Big fat stay away on that one. Moving on to a profile fight at 145 pounds. We're finally getting a juicy one. This one's the one to watch out for. This is one that these guys are going to have a second fight 8 years down the road. 6 years down the road, they're going to see each other again because they're both fun and prospects. Mike Trezino coming off of the win off of the contender or the Tough House. Grant Dawson coming up through the contender series, being 13-1. Dawson's only lost TKO to Pulley in there, but coming off of a 4-fight winning streak. He's been able to finish guys on the ground via submission, TKO ground and pound, and even beat Juicy J as of late in a decision 2 months, 6 days ago. Grant Dawson comes in with a heavy takedown-centric game plan. He throws 3-4 punch combinations, but instead of him throwing a leg kick or an elbow on the exit or on the last entry before he clinches, he shoots that double leg takedown, single leg takedown, and just has a really high output on the ground. He is a bit sloppy. He knows what he's doing on the ground, but there is times in some of the transitions that I saw from Grant Dawson that his sheer tenacity and willing to just not lose the position won more than anything. His actual technical ways, skill against the good guy can be exploited against the guy who doesn't decide to roll around on the ground with him and just kind of use technique can really stifle, I think, the type of fighter that Grant Dawson is. Mike Trezino is exactly that guy. He came in as an underdog against Luis Pena, ended up winning a split decision, and he used also a wrestling-centric type of a takedown offense, even throughout the show. Chris Boxing, for this Tiger Schulman disciple, he has a great jab, not tons of power, really uses his wrestling to throw the rhythm off match, and is not above just taking you down with a great double leg takedown and sitting in your guard and winning a decision. He can do it to a lot of guys. He also has great takedown defense, or not submission defense, when he is in the guard. And Dawson, I could see potentially being the guy on the bottom here most of this fight. So this is a really close match. I think on the feet, Dawson isn't a better striker than Trezino. I think he just throws more output, and the takedowns aren't as good. I think Trezino has better wrestling credentials than Dawson. So I think this is an uphill battle for Dawson. But with that pace, with his tenacity, I do like the underdog in Dawson. I do think that he can make positions for himself, even if he's in a bad position. He's almost Tony Ferguson-esque in there, where, Tony gave up that takedown, but guess what? You're eating so many elbows or fighting off so many submissions that people are going to be like, whew. Then again, we got the local guy here. How far is Rochester from New Jersey?
Probably not too far. Probably right over the bridge through I think you have to go through like New York City and everything, and then the tunnel. But I mean, overall, in the neck of the woods of the world,
right,
close.
Right. You would think that they would probably cheer for Trezino as well, the crowd.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's gonna have everyone he knows there.
Definitely, he's gonna have his Uncle Vito and all those guys hanging out at the fight. But I have Trezino decision right now. I see this potentially turning into a dirty split. I'm going to give you an underdog. I'm switching on air. This is going to be a fun one. I think it goes a dirty split. I'm not going to be mad because this is going to be one to watch. I got Dawson. Give me it a decision. This is a fun one. The more skills, though, I do see Trezino having the slightly better, well-rounded fighter overall in the fight. This is a fun one. I'm excited. I don't think I'm mad even if I get a loss here. Give me the plus 120 underdog. Who do you have in this fight and why?
I thought I was going to have another something opposite than you, but I have Grant Dawson as well. I like Grant Dawson here, not only because he's the local guy, but you know how when sometimes you meet a child and you're like, that kid's an old soul. I feel like that about Grant Dawson in the UFC. There's something I like about him. I like the way he looked in his last fight. I think he is one of those guys with heart. I think he comes at you strong the entire time. I think this is going to be a great fight. I think this is when the fight night changes. We have another fight, though. I mean, really, so far with close fight nights and the way they're going to start, every single fight is right there. I think all the line, as far as the 700 under and whatever, that's way off lines to me. But I like Grant Dawson, too. I think this is a really close fight. I like Trezano here. And he's the king of the dirty split.
True. True. And the local guy here is Trezino, not Dawson. Dawson's coming over from Glory MMA out of Missouri, but I do think he's over. Is that Taburian?
Maybe no. I'm changing on air. I'm going to have Trezino decision. I like everything about Grant Dawson here, but I do think Mike Trezano is the king of the dirty split, and so if he's going to get it, it's going to be in his home shit.
With his locally close guy. So we switched on air. You had Dawson first. I had Trezino. I went to Dawson. You went to Trezino. Interesting. Yeah. How it comes in there. But again, profile fight. Be sure to stick around
it's a fun
wherever
one for
you
sure.
can.
2 bangers.
Definitely 2 bangers. 2 young up-and-coming guys that are going to have long careers moving in this sport. At 170 pounds, we're coming in with a debuter, Michelle Pereira, against Danny Roberts. Danny Roberts, Hot Chocolate Roberts, is coming in with a 16-4 record, coming off of a loss to Claudio Silva, armbar, in a fight that he was winning. Prior to that, he beat David Zawad in a split decision end camp via TKO, but he also lost to Nordin Taleb, head kick in there, beating people like Bobby Nash. So, Hot Chocolate Roberts, one of these guys, just like earlier on in the fight night, we can't be trusting him that much because his gas tank doesn't allow him to go hard in that third round, and his chin has always been a little suspect. He's, in many fights, even that Taleb and his last losses, and that Silva fight especially, Silva was losing that solidly 2 rounds and ended up hurting Roberts and then getting that submission. But Roberts was literally within 30 seconds, a minute of winning that fight. And Silva just showed that he had a little bit more in the gas tank. So I don't know if Roberts quits in there or if he just gives it everything, but just that gas tank notoriously, if he can't get his wrestling going, striking-wise, he has power, but he just doesn't wear it well. His legs really wobble if he gets touched up in there. And against a fighter like Demilor, how do you pronounce that nickname? Demilordor. I saw it earlier.
Dumbledore?
He's fighting out of Road FC over in Asia. He's got a loss in there.
I don't have a clue.
It's a tough one, but Mikel coming in I know you've seen this fighter before because he was fighting 5 months ago, 2 months ago, and doing flips off of the cage. You saw those gifs where a guy literally is standing, does a backflip in the middle of the cage, and then keeps fighting. Or he's trying to pass guard, and he grabs the cage, both hands over, and does a backflip off of the cage to try to jump guard. Again, he's doing these things and being extra flashy in here with people that are 2 and 3 professionals, 4 and 5 professionals. He does have some 11 and 6 guys in there, some 16 and 14 at his 22 and 9 record. But that flashiness that we do see is when he's one-sidedly winning the fight. He has grown up fighting for a long time. At 25 years old, I was able to watch some of his earlier fights in Brazil, and he's always had that striking, that's Muay Thai, good plum clinch, frames off a lot. I feel like I'm going to see Michel get a lot of eye pokes in this because he likes to really reach out there, fingers extended, and I do see points eventually getting taken from him because there wasn't one fight that I wasn't like, dang, he's getting really close to poking those guys. Other than that, though, the strikes for Michel, really, really fun. They are 1 and 2 punch combinations at most, though. He rarely throws 4 or 5 punch combinations. It's only when he's fighting complete trash cans that he can afford to do that. Against his last loss, TKO to Tojvik, ended up catching that one. That was a first round TKO, and all of that flash didn't mean shit in that fight. When he had a legitimate fighter who was landing leg kicks on him moving forward, we saw Michel backing up in there and just allowing punches to come off. We had Trudrick in there be able to land like a 7-punch combination before a left landed, but prior to that, it was just a completely different fighter when he's not a front runner. Michel is definitely a front runner. He is very explosive and can go into that 3rd round, but he's very sloppy in a lot of times. He reminds me of a Thiago Silva. It's really interesting at how big he looks at 170 in there for me. But if Roberts can get this to the ground, I haven't seen much that I've liked from Pereira on the ground. Haven't seen too much ground stuff. He's mainly stayed striking throughout his career. Roberts has a direct avenue and game plan to get there. Striking-wise, though, Mikel has enough power to be able to land one of those spinning hook kicks, one of these teeps that he throws, or just really looping crazy shots. It's the ones you don't see coming that hurt you the most, and Roberts really can't take those kind of shots. So I have Roberts winning this decision. I saw a finish earlier because I think that Roberts is going to have a better gas tank than Michel. I don't think that this young man has too good of a gas tank against the opponent he's shown. I think the wrestling comes through. I got a decision Roberts, but I'm super tentative here. Might end up playing Pereira on my DKs because I do think either guy could finish here. Either guy. Give me Roberts' decision. I don't like this fight, betting-wise. I'm not confident on either side. What do you think about this one?
I have Robert's decision as well, and it's just to stick with what I know. Experience. If Roberts can't get it together by now, he can never get it together, but in a way I kind of think this is a gimme fight for him. I think he's from the UK. They're trying to build up a couple of stars from there. They can't put all their trust in Darren Till. He's shot out of a cannon. Shot out of a cannon these days. I just can't even fathom this guy coming down from 205. That's crazy. All the way to 170? Was he a fat boy in his last fight? What in the hell?
He was fighting in Asia. He was having Brazilian doctors. There was some fights in there where I'm like, oh, wow. It looks like he put about 20 pounds of muscle, just muscle on. You can see like 5 years when he's 20 years old. Then again, you do a lot of growing in that time, but he's definitely a physical specimen.
He's done a lot of shrinking because he's 25 years old now. Yeah. So it's just like, that's the only thing that really worries me in this fight with Danny Roberts. Danny Roberts is training with the best guys still. He's still at good camps, I think. He has all that UFC experience. He's only losing to the best of the best in there. I won't go super heavy, but I'll have it speckled. Tell me how much Danny Roberts is.
Danny Roberts, 8,900 on DraftKings.
What's his average points? That doesn't seem right.
60 points on DraftKings.
A lot of high price, low scorers.
Yeah, I totally agree with that one. Against Mikel Pereira's 7,300 for the debuter.
What's his average points? Or it's zero?
Zero. He's never fought in the UFC yet.
That is unbelievable.
Danny Roberts minus 250 on the betting lines. I'm going to take a shot on DraftKings on Mikhail just because of that chin and how incredibly crazy this guy is. I do think that he can potentially get a finish in here
that
against
chin, though,
fading.
With 35 pounds less is crazy different, right? I mean, I'm talking out of my ass. I have no idea, but it seems like if he was a big guy before.
Right. I just don't see Roberts really paying off that 8,900, so I don't think I'm going to play Roberts there.
I think that might be a dog or pass play.
Yeah, if there's a punt play, as they say, or somebody who might just show out, I do think you got to put a couple cards.
I'm insecure after my last week's card.
Hey, you got to come back, keep on hitting it. It's the way it goes. Long term, we've been winning money for many weeks on end. You win some, you lose some. We have fun here, making money either way. This one is going to be one to definitely, this fight card is going to be one to just maybe watch at a distance a little bit because, again, betting lines it's a little stiff. It's definitely a little bit stiffer than we've seen it in a while. Moving on to 155 pounds, we have Des Green coming in against Charles Jourdain. I think, what's his nickname? Air Jourdain.
That's clever.
It's not
I like
bad.
that shit.
It's not bad at all.
That's good. I like it when it's nerdy like that. Give me a good nerdy thing.
A 9-1 prospect coming out of Canada.
He even has his tongue out in his picture on Tapology, a la Air Jourdain.
Definitely. He's coming out of the TKO fighting series. We've seen a couple guys come out of there out of Canada, and they can hold their own. It's definitely not the steepest competition, but as far as for Canada, it's not the absolute bottom of the barrel. Jourdain, though, comes in with quite a few submissions and finishes. He does like to get it done in there as quickly as possible. But again, the competition level is nowhere near Des Green's level. His last fight was against a 17-11 fighter, Lapalus. I don't believe he had UFC ties, but he beat him via TKO. We see Jourdain come in here with crazy spinning attacks. He throws heavy punches. He actually throws 3 and 4 punch combinations really well together, and at times will throw a 3 punch combination and end it with a spinning back fist. I know he's gotten a couple back fist finishes in there as well, or he'll hurt you and jump on a guillotine as well. But those guillotines and submissions that I saw Jourdain get on tape was usually started with one of his striking combinations. He comes at you hot. This young man definitely pushes the pace well, and against the competition that he's been fighting, he's been able to get them out of there. The level, though, Des Green's been fighting at Bellator and in the UFC has been such higher levels. His wrestling credentials have spoken for themselves. He tends to grind it out in there. He does have a finish over Ross Pearson in his last fight, but Ross Pearson, again, bit of a fade on there. Des Green, huge favorite there. Des Green lost a decision to Taisumov, which was controversial. Lost to Prazeres, which Prazeres came in 8 pounds overweight or something for that. Lost to Rustam Habilov. These are all middling, like top 15-ish, barely fighters, where Charles has fought guys that couldn't even break into the UFC. So definitely going to see Jourdain. Once he gets going, though, in these 3 and 4 punch combinations, he really gets over top heavy, and that's where he hurts people because he lunges into his punches so much, where I see the more of the wrestler in Des Green just duck under those shots, eventually get him to the ground. I like the ground scrambles for Jourdain. He is powerful and knows when to arch in there, but against the level of Green, I do think that he eventually stays on top, and I do see this turning into a decision. I think the wrestling takes over. Green on his feet is serviceable. He has actually a really good defensive shell on him as well. His dreads, though, we like to say it here, that hair always gets him in a dirty-ass split decision.
Are you saying he has that Clay Guida?
That's what I'm saying. Even if even if the shot barely lands, it's just accentuated by his hairstyle. It just looks worse than it is. So Des Green in there has to get a wrestling game plan going. Hopefully Des Green doesn't think, oh, I beat Ross Pearson and knocked him out. I can go striking because Jourdain has power and he can hurt people. So puncher's chance for Jourdain, but the better all-around mixed martial artist is the sided favorite at a plus 500. Humongous favorite. A lot of people see the wrestling coming through for Des Green. Who do you have in this fight and why?
Des Green decision. I think it's not going to be very exciting. And you said he's a super heavy favorite. What is he, the second most expensive guy of the night?
Second most at 9,500.
That's crazy. All these grinders, even though they're going to win, I can't guarantee that they're going to get brutal points. I just think it's going to be a bunch of...
Right, it could be one takedown per round, and then it just turns into a 60-point win for 9,500 on DraftKings for Green.
Hold down.
Exactly.
And maybe strikes enough to keep them on the ground, but not significant strikes because they have to come at distance or whatever. I'm trying to read details of different
what's considered
systems,
strike stats.
Yeah, I took it somewhere, and I was like, I'm gonna bring this to the show and come all prepared.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Where it is. I'm gonna have to find it.
Was it the criteria for a significant strike?
Criteria for every point in
DraftKings?
Yeah, but not just DraftKings. I think it was...
The fight metric scored by the UFC?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, eventually we'll end up getting there. So on DraftKings, you're going to end up paying, again, $9,500 for Green against debuting Jourdain, $6,700. Could see a pump play here if Des Green thinks he's a striker all of a sudden, but I'm going to probably end up just staying away from that one altogether as well. It's going to be hard to put Green in any lineups because it's hard for him to pay out against all right, young man, who's going to grow a lot from that fight. At 135 pounds.
Why would you put Des Green if you're going to spend some money?
Totally agree.
When you could put Aspen Ladd. I'm just going to say it.
Oh, interesting. Are you already showing your cards before the breakdown comes about in Aspen Ladd for Sinjara Eubanks? Number 2, these ladies fought at Invicta. Aspen Ladd ended up winning a decision in that fight. I do believe it was at 135 pounds as well. Sinjara Eubanks being up there as one of the heels for WMMA, I would say. She's definitely in that.
I know you're not a fan.
I'm not the only one. There's quite a few people that haven't liked the way she came in. She ended up winning the Contender Series, winning the Tough House by winning her fights via submission. But eventually, she did beat Roxanne Modafferi, but was not eligible for the belt because she came in overweight, because she's undisciplined, regularly has cardio issues, and she likes to eat. And now that she's had a child, she's found it hard to be able to distinguish both. That was prior to her last fight that she was talking about, that 6 months ago against Roxanne Modafferi. She says she's back on track.
So now she's fighting at 135.
But with the things that she's saying, it could be 145, and she's going to miss weight.
I agree. I'm just saying. For
right.
Just for unbiased, I was just, she missed weight at 125, and now she's up to 135.
Right.
So.
At 5'3", she shouldn't have an issue, but she is muscularly built. She was up at 160-something pounds, ended up winning all those jiu-jitsu belts and stuff. But really, she comes in and tries to strike a lot. Her takedowns aren't half bad for Eubanks, but Eubanks on the ground, even though she's a great gi jiu-jitsu practitioner, doesn't really translate as much into MMA. She does have submissions against low-level ladies in there, but against Aspen Ladd, on a meteoric rise, a perfect 7-0, having Invicta titles, coming into the UFC and beating Tanya Evinger TKO, beating Lena Landsberg via TKO. She has one of the best screams in the game. She beat both of those ladies. Banshee screaming them into oblivion. She likes to get on top once she uses that double leg takedown. She uses great chain wrestling. So what's really good about Aspen Ladd's actual grappling technique is that she doesn't just stop on her single shot. She ends up going back to a single, going back to a double, and that's where even the type of fighters of Eubanks, where Eubanks will fight that first takedown really well, but you do 2 or 3 takedowns chained together, and all of a sudden she's like, damn, all right, you got my back. And once we see Ladd get to the ground, we know that she has a ton of output. Striking wise, she's good on her feet, but where her strike stats are really skewed in her favor is on the ground. Aspen Ladd has one of these offenses, unlike some of Trezino that we were saying. He loses more position. Aspen Ladd gets to that position just to land strikes. So she's actually a fairly DK friendly type of a play because she ends up just having a lot of output. And I see this happening a lot like the first one did. Ladd's a favorite here, a big favorite for a reason. I think it plays out. I think a lot of those intangibles with Eubanks, she's just not the type of fighter you can ever really put money on because you don't know if she decides to eat a box of Krispy Kremes the day before the weigh-in. She's just mentally does this kind of for fun and is just not taking it seriously enough for me. I got Ladd decision. I do think it's a little steep. Eubanks could get a good fight in there, but who do you have in this fight and why?
I just think the last time they fought, Aspen Ladd, the skill level and what she's been showing inside the UFC octagon has been leaps and bounds better than what we've been seeing from Sinjara Eubanks. I also agree with you that maybe even to early stoppage for her fights, as crazy as it is, she handled Lena Landsberg everywhere, but Lena Landsberg is far inferior than Tanya Evinger, in my opinion. Tanya Evinger, it might have been a little fast fight, but if you're screaming like a banshee and still landing punches, how many punches are they going to let somebody land before...
May I say a caveat in that?
Yeah.
Remember that Evinger came off of the worst injury she'd ever had, in her knee being literally torn apart.
Fair enough.
Just to say. So, Eubanks is definitely going to be a game competitor in there, so... I like what you're saying, though. I could see a late round finish in here in like the third round type of
I just think this is a build-up for Aspen Ladd in an odd way. Maybe a setup fight where they're like, the UFC doesn't like Sinjara Eubanks very much, so they're almost feeding her to the wolves by giving her... Aspen Ladd's a huge 135er. Her body's really filled in. She's really cut up. She's one of the few women in these divisions that has a body comparable to a Sinjara Eubanks. I just think I got Aspen Ladd here. I'm going to go with around, I think it's going to be partially strikes landed in repetition mixed with quit from Eubanks. I got a round 3 TKO Aspen Ladd. I'm going to put my girl everywhere because she also just lands repetitive strikes. She's going to have takedowns like you're saying. And to get a ton of points like that, to be one of the people that lay out a bunch of points, in my opinion, that everyone forgets about, you need a game opponent that doesn't mind being a punching bag for a bit. I think Sinjara Eubanks can take a lot of damage as well. So yeah, I think late fight finish, round 3.
I do not dislike that at all. I could definitely see this being in that third round type of finish for Ladd just because of her gas tank tenacity and just willing to dominate her opponents.
And I just think the UFC is building her.
I agree. And I like what you're saying with Eubanks. Eubanks burned them. They didn't like all of that situation going around. And then Eubanks went out and talked about all this trash about like... she really dislikes guys that talk stuff, and she's like openly is like, oh, if you ain't gonna hit me, you better stop talking to me. Like she openly throws that at dudes like, oh, whatever, I'm a lady, but if you ain't gonna hit me, don't say nothing. So she just put a weird taste in a lot of people's mouths. 9,100 for the minus 300 favorite Aspen Ladd against 7,100 for Eubanks. I don't think you put Eubanks anywhere. I think that you can put Ladd, I'm going to say probably 40 to 50%, maybe around that 60% Ladd. I like what you're saying.
Right
think she's
now,
a high payer.
Yeah.
Averages 100 points.
I don't want to go so early, but right now, Ladd might be my linchpin.
Ooh, wow.
That might be going down.
There's another one later on in the night that also is in tie-ups that I can think of off the top of my head. But if you're not liking and subscribing, you're missing out.
I know exactly who you're talking about, and yes. I totally agree, but I think I'm going to have them, I'm going to call it the double L. I'm going to have double L's on every card.
Ooh.
I'm just going to say that. And
they don't always happen, but when they do, you need to
Oh my gosh, could it be triple L?
Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Could it be triple L?
We'll have to wait and see. If you're on YouTube, remember to hit that notification button so you can get these breakdowns as quickly as possible. You're following me at Zoltanite, at Weak Neck Baby over here for C, at Lesbo and the Bean as of right now. Again, our YouTube game's getting better all and every day.
And eventually this TV, you guys, we're going to figure it out. Where we're going to have stuff on here, little videos, pictures. Maybe we even say maybe live companions. Eventually.
Who knows? We have all sorts of sorts of stuff we're working with.
We're growing, but I feel like every 100 shows, I'm going to pat us on the back for a minute. And to pat us on the back as well, if you want to, you could go over to LATB_MMA on Instagram and follow us for fun stuff. But every 100 shows, we're bringing new game.
Truth. Truth.
We grow in leaps and bounds. And you grow with us, and we appreciate you. And, so just tell a friend.
definitely tell a friend. And if you need any new soaps in your bathroom, any new bath bombs for those loved ones around you, be sure to use LatB15 at Lather & Company on Instagram. Wherever you can find them, on Facebook, they're all over there. They do sponsor us. They keep it going. They help us get this type of stuff done. So we really appreciate it if you could help them out whenever you need some of those bed and bath type of
I don't
purchases.
know if there's any bed things.
Oh.
But maybe you could take a nice bath and go to bed.
You'll be smelling good going to bed from your bath that you had from Lather & Company. Saving the day. Woo!
Yeah, and here it's getting a little warmer. It's springtime. All those flowers that are blooming, they probably have soaps or bath bombs or something that smells like those kind of things for the ladies out there. And for the dudes out there, there's a whole bunch of, like, I don't know, sexy, masculine, handsome shit that you can look at too. So go over there, put in the code LATB15, get yourself 15% off. Order $25 or more. And they're the kind of nice people too. If you order like $23, they're just like, hey, order the cheapest thing you can find on here and get yourself free shipping and handling. You actually save money by getting this free item. So they're really nice, and you can do that. So support them. We're trying to support you, and we only give you stuff that we back as well.
And use ourselves.
Yeah, so.
Trusted and approved. The main card, if you weren't following out the night, it was going to be on ESPN. It is going to be on ESPN Plus throughout the entire night. Rochester, New York. Remember, those judges might have something in the water. The bagels might be made out of something different out there. The pizza is definitely world-renowned.
In Rochester?
In New York,
all of it?
It all lumps in together, doesn't it?
I don't think so. I don't know.
I think New York pizza. That's all I was getting off of.
I think it says New York City, but maybe Rochester's got bomb pizza. I don't want to put Rochester pizza down.
Exactly. Maybe let us know out there if you're eating in Rochester. What's the best pizza joint around? But the main event is going to be a star-studded event with some debut fights with some veteran fighters. It does end up finishing pretty fun, but starts out at 155 pounds with debuting Austin Hubbard coming in against Dabi Hamosh in there. Dabi Hamosh being 9-2, coming off of a 3-fight winning streak, last beating John Gunther, Nick Hine, and also beating Chris Gutzmacher in a decision, only losing to Sergio Moraes in a decision. We've really seen Davi Ramos come into his own, get his gas tank under him, understand that Ramos's ground game is really where he makes his most money in there. Very looping punches. He comes in there, ducks his head a little bit and swings hard, but eventually does try to get it to the ground. And on the ground, humongous advantage for him against almost anybody in there. We've really seen Ramos not cut through people's guards like butter. Gutzmacher is a good grappler in there. He cut right through him. Though, who wasn't? He just got a total layup in his last one with Gunther. That was 6 months ago. But Gunther in there, definitely super low level. Austin Hubbard, though, being 10-2 in there. He's coming off of a controversial win in LFA. He is the newly crowned LFA champion against Kilis Mota, a Glover Teixeira disciple. He ended up having this fight. I've never seen this before. He had this fight stopped with 2 to 3 seconds left in the first round because he was getting choked. I believe it was in a rear naked choke or it was a guillotine. I watched a lot of tape because there was quite a few debuters. But either way, his hand almost did a Robbie Lawler where it went limp. But instead of going limp, it fell and it immediately went under the elbow. The ref, though, as soon as he saw that downward movement of that hand, he called the fight off. Called it off. Mota is out there freaking cheering, and then the ref is like, oh, there was enough time, fight's on, and Mota fucking gasses hard, and gets beat the shit out of until the fourth round, because it's a championship bout, but a lot of other commissions would have not allowed that. Once those arms cross, the fight's off regardless, and it's a no contest, but you don't start it.
So much so, you're so right that even at the beginning of matches, they say, once the fight stops, there's no restarting it. You hear it in the small print words. You know how at the beginning of UFC fights are like, this is a scheduled contest for blah, 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 blah.
Right. Once it stops, we can go to replay, but we can't restart the bout. So it was super controversial coming out of that Access Fight LFA series, but LFA has great tenured fighters in the UFC at all weights. So definitely Hubbard comes in with a jack of all trades, master of none, bit of punches. His gas tank's good, but he's a bit of a punching bag in there. He doesn't move that well. He just kind of moves on a center line and goes forward. On the ground, seeing him beating low-level guys, Davi Ramos is just such a higher level. The guys that I saw Hubbard getting wins in there were all likely gassing, and his gas tank's one of those biggest issues. But like I said, Ramos he recently in his last few fights started to get his gas tank under control. So I'm going to have the huge favorite, minus 125, 32-year-old Davi Ramos to win via submission round number 2. I think Hubbard gets better as the fight goes on, but I think Ramos is doing the same at this point. He's getting fed to the wolves in here. He's going to have another fight later on, but this is just kind of another layup for Ramos, and he's had a few of these with that Gunther one as well. So I don't know if someone fell out or something, but Demi Ramos, I'm going to probably end up putting him everywhere, even though he's expensive. I see this turning into a finish pretty easily. Who do you have in this fight and why?
The Tasmanian Devil as well for submission round 2. I'm giving the kid, Austin Hubbard, a little bit of respect here, going off the scene that he fights in and the record that he has against guys that are not cans. But I'm going to stick with what I know in a guy with experience in the UFC. I think that Ramos is also right at that sweet spot of his fighting career. I think 32 for some reason is where your brawn and brain meet. It's not your strongest that you are, it's not your smartest that you'll be, but it's the peak of both, the highest level that you're going to get them in your life.
Right.
And so there's something sweet about Ramos here, and I think he's going to figure out the kid. I think he'll respect the kid's power at first, feel him out, download him, so to speak, and then once that happens, he will get him to the ground and submit him in a way that you're saying that the Moda kind of did as well.
Right.
So I just think if Moda did it, Ramos is doing it. So
9,200 for the decided favorite against Hubbard, 7,000 for the debuter. Like Ladd, 9-2. I need some of these pump plays like Michel earlier at 7,000. If he wins, because he has a knockout potential, but I do see Ramos and maybe not so. I'm more confident in Ramos at 9-2 than Ladd at 9-1. So I could see myself doing 60% of Ramos. We had a 9-5 earlier. 9,500 earlier.
I know, but Ramos' last win to me is so unimpressive. It's like a non-win. And then Nick Hine I like, but Nick Hine I'm kind of fading.
Decline, true.
So Austin Hubbard could be on his way up as Ramos is on his way down. And this is also Ramos fighting out of Brazil, which makes me a little nervous. So Aspen Ladd is... I'm just what have you done for me lately? And I feel like Aspen Ladd's been on point lately. She looks like a world beater lately.
How much do you think you're going to play Ramos?
I'm going to do it the exact opposite of you. I'm 60-40 Ladd.
Okay. I like that.
On for the other 40.
I like that.
If you need a little layup, I feel like I could afford them both.
I agree. I feel like with the kind of people we're telling you to take dog shots on, you're going to be able to support some of these. With Grant as an underdog, he's a big underdog to be able to afford some of these 9,000 type of fighters. On to 155 pounds, we have a rematch on number 3. I know this says number 2, but it's not. It's number 3. And Charles Oliveira coming in against Nick Lentz, 155 pounds. The first one was a no contest due to an illegal knee by Oliveira against Nick Lentz, which was considered a no contest. Then they officially fought again, and Nick Lentz lost a decision, or it was a submission. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But we have... Probably
a submission.
It might have been a submission.
Just because Oliveira doesn't ever tend to win decisions.
Oh, that's a good point.
To make it there.
The Carney Lentz...
I like to call Charles Oliveira quit or submit. Like, he either quits or he submits him.
True. Oliveira has had definitely some of those mental issues. He lost via guillotine choke to Charles Oliveira, so good call on that one. But with Nick Lentz, his striking has looked better than it ever has in the last few fights. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. Last beating Gray Maynard, which doesn't look that good. But Hot Toss Holtzman, he was an underdog there. I believe C over here had Nick Lentz winning that fight all over, and it was pretty one-sided. I don't think Nick Lentz had any trouble. If anything, Hot Toss was close to being finished multiple times via guillotine as well as strikes. Nick Lentz really pulling it all together, throwing up good head kicks every once in a while in there now, but his striking is just really, really on point. The 34-year-old's gas tank has always been one of his best attributes, and dragging this into third round is where you really start to see Oliveira break. He's one of these front runners. Oliveira will eat you alive if he gets going. But once he starts to get a little bit of that pushback, we've seen him quit time and time again. He is on a 4-fight winning streak. The 26-8 fighter last beat David Tamura submission, beating Jim Miller as well submission, Giagos, and Clay Guida as of late. All those guys, tough fights, but I think Nick Lentz is the type of person, even though they've already seen each other twice, and Nick Lentz has technically lost both of them, because he did eat that knee to the face, even though it was illegal. I do think that Lentz can put a different game plan together now that he's not at Top Team. Now that he's at another gym that you see other stuff, he's really been talking a lot of good stuff of how he's taking it to the next game because he's getting specialized training instead of being just another gear in the monster cog wheel of Top Team. So I'm actually going with the dirty under here. He's a big underdog, but I think Cheney changed my mind last time. I think Nick Lentz is on a little bit of a run, and Oliveira in that first round is going to do really well. His Muay Thai has always been legendary, as well as everything. I just think Lentz, the Carney, turns this into a dirty grind. Once we get into the third round, I got 2-1. Lentz, I think Oliveira wins the first one. This is an iffy one. I might be tentative on this one. This is a big underdog. I'm tentative. I like Lentz in this one decision. Who do you have and why?
I'm 8-1 with Nick Lentz.
Ooh, that's a great record.
That is a great record as a fighter. I feel like there's certain rules. You know, I like to abide by rules. I try to find order with the chaos of the universe. I don't know if it's always true, but it just seems a lot of the time true. What beats jiu-jitsu?
Wrestling.
Who's a dirty wrestler?
Definitely Nick the Carney Lentz. 100%.
I agree with you. I think Nick Lentz can pull out a dirty-ass decision here. Charles Oliveira has quit where it makes me all... I'm already changing it to a KO round 3.
Whoa.
Charles Oliveira does not like it. Once he realizes he can't submit someone, he does something like illegal knee, poke him in the eye, quit. He's just a guy that once it's not going his way, there's he doesn't just keep fighting for the submission the entire time. He eventually just starts laying on his back and begging him to come down. I have liked what I've seen from Charles Oliveira's game of lately. I feel like he's grown leaps and bounds, and he's just looked better and better in there, and he's beat guys like I did not see it coming, beating David Tamura. With Charles Oliveira, I'm 7-7. Because I, thought Jim Miller would be a nasty little grind for him. It's like no one expects the submission, but who would know better than Nick Lentz what to expect from him in there? I think Nick Lentz can figure it out this time. I think he has better hands. I like that he's at American Top Team.
He's not there.
Oh, he's not.
No.
He's where?
Yeah, he's up in Georgia somewhere. I can't. Yeah. No, he's at an independent gym now.
I like that he's at whatever you were saying, the specialized thing that they're doing with him now. That you like that he's there. I too like whatever. I should have just said I like that he has a camp change. Because he is a guy at his age that he's in that sweet spot that if somebody starts tweaking his brain a little bit now, I think his skills have been worked on long enough. Somebody needs to take Nick Lentz, and it sounds like they have, and do what he does now at this age well. There's no need for him to learn any new skills.
Agreed.
Now it's just take what he does well, and if they're doing that, he figures this fight out. I'm going to move it to round 3. I think he has killer cardio as well, which we also know Charles Oliveira does not have. So I do think he finishes the fight this time. Give me the dirty carny, and then I can afford 2 9,000s.
Exactly. On DraftKings, the decided favorite, Charles Oliveira, being a minus 2 or 365 favorite against Nick the Carney Lentz 6,900. On DraftKings, the plus 270 underdog, Charles Oliveira 9,300. Do you see yourself playing a lot of Lentz here or not?
Yeah. I like Nick Lentz.
I actually can see myself.
He can get submitted. I think I'm going to 50. I'll put both guys on cards.
I was about to say the exact same thing. I do think Oliveira, if I'm playing those other 2 9,000 guys, I'm not playing Oliveira. If I'm not playing those other 2, I'm playing Oliveira.
If Nick Lentz is capped, Charles Oliveira is a dude who I think he's still getting better. That's where he's getting dangerous. And going against a guy like Nick Lentz, a dirty grinder like Nick Lentz, so Charles Oliveira can figure you out even more, just could be dangerous for everybody else in the division. It seems like crazy killer practice. So, yeah, I might have both guys peppered on the same amount of cards.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
This should be the 8-1-8 or whatever on DraftKings.
Well, a lot of people are seeing that prior fight being a submission, a quick one in there for Lentz. That's swaying them. But as far as DraftKings, 9,300 for Oliveira at an average 65 points compared to Nick Lentz's 6,900 with an average 73 points. I kind of see that people are going to be playing Lentz here a little bit. And it makes sense to me, honestly. I'm, again, going to be playing both guys on there.
I don't know. I could see Nick Lentz not being very heavily owned.
Which would work out for us even better.
Work out for us even better.
Exactly. Moving on, though, to 145 pounds, we have returning Megan Anderson coming in against Felicia Spencer. The Australian fighter's 8-3. She's tenured in the UFC, losing her debut to Holly Holm. Definitely a top 5 fighter in any division that she chooses to fight in the UFC. And last beating TKO via toe kick or toe gouge to the eyeball. Ended up cutting Kat Zingano's eye wide open. It was brutal.
I wanted to talk shit too. I wanted to talk shit when it first what in the cat? What the?
What happened?
And then after I saw it, I'm like, ah.
Absolutely brutal. We couldn't take much away from that because it was a kind of a freak accident in there. But Megan has been in the States for a little while now. She has been training over at a Glory MMA with Grant Dawson. I can't remember where they're located out of. Missouri. I believe there's a couple other people out of Glory MMA as well. But either way, this humongous 145er is 6 foot. She's definitely got a ton of size over most of her opponents, especially against debuting Felicia Spencer. The Invicta champion is 5'6" and a perfect 6-0 record fighting out of Canada. She's been fighting, she's Canadian, but she's been fighting out of Orlando for a while, fighting with Jamie Moyle out of the Jungle MMA fitness scene. That's the only other UFC fighter is Jamie Moyle at, I believe, at 115 pounds. And Jamie Moyle is 4-4 in her pro career. So Spencer, by far for this gym, is the best prospect anywhere. The fact that she doesn't have a losing record, where I looked at their gym, most of their fighters have losing records. They're like 11-18 and stuff like that. So out of Orlando, not looking so good. But what we get with Felicia Spencer is a awkward striker with a not tentative, the tenacity on the ground game. She likes to pass on the ground. She's heavy, has heavy hips, but against the level of opponents she's been fighting, it's been pretty low level. She just kind of has a lot more heart. I believe she's a math tutor or a math teacher as well, but she has been devoting more and more time to MMA, being the Invicta champ. She gets submissions in there, arm bars and stuff, but again, the competition level is just so low. Her takedowns are almost non-existent. She trips over the leg, but there was multiple fights that I saw of hers where her opponents easily countered those trips, and only in Felicia Spencer's wriggly ground game is the best way I can say it did she get eventually the reversal and end up on top. Though when Spencer's on top, she throws a ton of output. She's like that Aspen Ladd type of fighter. She just keeps punching, throwing elbows. Even if she's half out of position, she can center herself well on somebody and just keep throwing punches until they eventually leave an arm out there for her to submit. She has a couple TKOs in there, but super low. Anderson is going to have such a reach advantage, such a striking advantage. Spencer throws a right and left high kick, but she really throws them almost Carlos Condon-esque, but not as technically sound. She just kind of throws a right and then throws the right head kick right after it. Against a good striker, Megan is going to shelf that, catch it, and sweep her out and end up on top. But Megan doesn't need to go to the ground at all against Spencer. It's the only time Spencer even has a chance is going to the ground. But I think Megan can dictate wherever this goes. And I see those hard body shots, that good Muay Thai clinch, eventually get it done for Megan. I think the size, the experience, all of it takes over. I think a lot of people see that as well. I'm surprised that it's this close of a favorite. I actually think Megan, it should be a more decided than minus 155. I kind of see her rolling. I had a decision. The more and more I'm looking at it, kind of see a TKO round number 2 or 3. I think Spencer is just completely outmatched. I don't want to be body shaming anyone, but I really do think that Spencer could easily be a 25er, and 15 would be hard for her to make, but 125 pounds really wouldn't be that bad. She would just have to really stick to a fitness regimen.
Is this almost a feed for Megan Anderson?
I kind of think so.
And in a weird way, she could be, I don't even know the name of it, and like Lemony Schnickets and Unfortunate Events or whatever, where it's like she's going to have this like perfect, it's almost the takedowns that we never seen ever in everybody's years of watching Holly Holm. You never see Holly go in and be the takedown queen, but it's almost like they had to teach her an entirely different game plan because they were threatened by Megan Anderson's stand-up, and for Holly Holm to be threatened by somebody's stand-up enough to turn into a ground specialist is pretty crazy, but that's just the smarts of Jackson Wink. So it's almost the dangerous to the rest of the division from here on out. And in a way, they can almost rest the division on Megan Anderson's shoulders and build her up as a superstar. She's got the looks. She seems to be learning the skills leaps and bounds. But now we have her here that, in my opinion, sometimes they say your losses are your biggest wins on what you grow. What would she have learned if she went in there and Holly Holm had her every other game plan? She would have learned nothing. She would have just honed her striking skills even that much more, which she didn't need to work on. She needed to work on her takedown defense, which I have to feel like with her size. And I wish we would have gotten to see it with Kat Zingano, because that would have really cemented our head either way coming forward. So Felicia Spencer's not going to give us that justification of that, unfortunately. But she does submit people, so as long as Megan can stay away from that, I too can see a TKO. It's what she does, and I just think the unfortunate events, why I said that at the beginning, is she just got to collect checks and have that quick fight with Kat that was like nothing, and really train that much longer on a ground game, because what's Kat the specialist at? Ground. So it's like now we just got to work on this for this amount of time, and we're going to give you a fighter that does that too, but maybe not as well as Kat Zingano, with probably less heart. So Anderson, finish round 2.
I actually am going TKO round 2 as well for Anderson. I would say Spencer's got a good amount of heart, though. I did like that from her. She moves forward even if she's losing the punches, but there's times...
I don't think she doesn't have any heart.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not trashing her. I just think Kat is like that next level.
That was just such a freak accident. That was just so freak.
No. I take that out. I take
that
out of Kat's repertoire. I just mean other fights that I've seen her in. That Amanda Nunes fight was bomb.
There's times in there where Spencer almost comes in like ducking, shucking the punch to just go in for the grapple. I like what you're saying with the takedowns. Megan is susceptible to those takedowns, but even Holly Holmes, who doesn't shoot takedowns really ever, is just such a different level of athlete than Spencer in there. So even her takedowns were actually really beautiful double leg setup takedowns where I've never seen Spencer throw half of those takedowns.
I wanted to build up Megan Anderson.
Agreed. Agreed.
Build me up, buttercup, baby, just to let me down.
So at 8,500, the minus 155 favorites coming in as the favorite on DraftKings as well against Spencer 7,700. I'm going to probably be putting Megan Anderson on like 60, 70% of my cards. I see this being, again, TKO round number 2. So does Cheney. So this one's going to end up working out for all of us. Under those 9,000, I feel like she easily ends up keeping this where she wants it until it's over.
Yeah, I hope so.
185 pounds.
Because I'm going to have her on like 70% as well. Maybe like 60.
Not the co-main event. Interesting. It got switched around at the last second. We have the third, almost the co-main event with Carlos Antonio Jr. over Ian Heinisch. This was the co-main, but that other fight fell out, and then they made that the co-main event. That's really weird. But either way, we got a really fun one at 185 here with the Hurricane coming in with a 12-1 record. Heinisch has one of those fun backgrounds we've talked about a little bit before. Was a drug trafficker, ended up doing prison time, training MMA while he was in prison, and ended up coming out and just dedicating his life to MMA. So, as we like to say with a lot of other guys who have a foot in a different career and a foot in MMA, Heinisch is 100% in MMA, and it's to keep him out of that bad lifestyle, and that's good. That makes me more confident in him that he's doing what he needs to do. He does have his only loss against Marcus Perez, who's in the UFC, who hasn't really done all that well in there. He was arm triangled, so that's something to be worried about because that was off of Perez's back. Heinisch ended up getting on top, and we just really don't see those type of submissions land on UFC caliber type of fighters. But Heinisch won his Contender Series fight, TKO from elbows from the guard. Then he came into the UFC, beat Cesar Montanch Ferreira as an underdog. I believe we had him here as an underdog on that beat. We liked his pressure. We liked his moving forward, his anti-wrestling. He has a good whizzer and underhook. Really fights it off well, and his gas tank going into the third round has been more than serviceable. Heinisch has a good output and really stays in your face. So what he does in his fights, what I feel like the commonality I saw in Heinisch is he's not necessarily throwing the most accurate or the most powerful strikes at you, but he's in your face so much that he's making you react, and you reacting and feinting so much to these eventually wears you out. That's what he did to Montanch. Montanch did have 5 takedowns in that fight, though. But Cesar Ferreira is one of the best wrestlers in the UFC at 185 pounds. He has takedown records, or leading in those takedown records. So the fact that Heinisch never gave up in those, he kept getting taken down, and the black belt, Montanch, was never able to submit him, I think really proves for Heinisch that he does have has shortened up a lot of those submission attempts. And he's going to have to against Shoeface here. Cara de Zapato comes in with all sorts of jiu-jitsu credentials, being 10-2, coming off a 5-fight winning streak, only losing to Dan Kelly in a mega fade. I believe we had just started our show when we were betting Dan Kelly on that fight. Do you remember that? Like 2 years ago?
I feel like I remember, sadly enough, every Dan Kelly fight.
Exactly. Being like, Shoeface is just a young prospect who can gas a little bit. There was other issues that came about in there, like he was missing his luggage and was supposedly sick. But he's one of these guys who, later in the fights, definitely starts to wear a little bit. Muay Thai good. Jiu-Jitsu is where Shoeface makes all of his money. Being able to submit people, has a sick rear naked choke. Won a controversial decision against Marvin Vettori, the wrestler in there, but people like Marshman, Submission, Spice Lee, those guys are low-level UFC. And last, Tim Bosch, who's on the way out. So I would still say Carlos Jr., Cara de Zapato, the wins he's got, the last 5, I think a lot of those guys are middling competition, where I see Heinisch, the Hurricane, kind of taking solid steps up, and he was a breakout star in his last fight. I think that he can dictate where this fight goes. Montanch, Cesar Ferreira, has great takedowns. One of the best double leg and single legs at the 185-pound division. And Cara de Zapato doesn't. He's a good boxer with a good clinch now, and he has a good jab that he started to throw out there. And once Shoeface gets you on the ground, he's awesome. But his shots are fairly slow and telegraphed. And I feel like against a fighter like Heinisch, he's able to, he really uses that plum clinch as well, uses his forearms really well, and even his head. He'll headbutt you a bit in there in order to stop the takedown. And we know in that third round, he really tends to look good. He's got power in his hands. He hurt Ferreira. That's why he ended up winning that in the second and third round. So I think he gets stronger as he goes. I know a lot of people are saying, don't do it. I've seen a lot of other bettors being like, oh, Heinisch is a big underdog, and people are stupid for picking him because Ferreira's good enough striker to be able to pick him apart. I think that Ferreira has a good first round, and second and third taken over by Heinisch. I think he keeps it where he wants to. Give me another underdog for the night. I got a decision, probably make it a dirty split, minus or plus 170 underdog in Heinisch. I think this young man has a future at 30 years old in the division. So does Shoeface as well, but this is definitely a profile fight. I would have been happier, honestly, with this being a co-main event because I am really excited for this one. I like everything I'm seeing from both guys, and it's going to be a fun one. What do you take away from this one?
I just don't like ever 100% of the time betting on Shoeface not in Brazil. I don't like it. And maybe you're going to be like, well, he beat this guy and this guy not in Brazil. Yeah, probably. But Heinisch just seems like he has crisper hands than most. He's a guy that I want to watch crawl up the division where I thought Shoeface was like 34.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I can't believe he's only 29. He has a nasty weight cut, and I want to stick with what I know here too and just jump right to Shoeface, but do I like Cesar Ferreira? I don't know. I don't know if I love Cesar Ferreira. And Carlos, is he better than... or is he in the level or getting to the same level as... his name starts with an M. And Usman Maya.
Oh, no, not even close. Maya definitely has a way more grappling-centric fight style.
Is wrestling.
That's what I'm saying. I think his wrestling is solid enough to be able to keep this striking. So, and I think striking-wise, even though I feel like Shoeface is a better technical striker.
He has better submissions, but he has shit takedowns. That's what
I'm saying.
Much. So Heinisch has the good enough. He can see the telegraph takedowns. Everything's fine. It makes me a little more confident about my opinion. And I also think Shoeface might have a little quit.
I can see that too. I totally agree with that.
I feel like if he don't submit, he quit. Heinisch, another KO round, late KO, which usually doesn't happen for me. KO round 3.
Wow. Shoeface, the sided favorite at minus 215 against Ian Heinisch, plus 170. You're going to end up paying $8,700 on DraftKings for Shoeface Carlos Jr. against Heinisch's $7,500 on DraftKings. You're going to be able to put a lot of these 9,000 fighters on here we were talking about earlier with these type of picks. Another underdog, unanimous here.
Oh, I have to be honest though. Like the same one before, I might go 50-50 with this. Or split them up, pepper them both.
They both can finish in this fight, for sure. For sure. But definitely a fun one. Really fun fight coming up there. Now the co-main event, this one ended up falling out. Neil Magny ended up popping.
And I hate to say this, Carlos Jr., that his age all of a sudden made him more threatening to me. Because I have noticed him get better and better every fight. Like something has clicked on that hasn't clicked on for other fighters that were, we always say what's going to, separate these. He has made the crawl into the next level of dudes.
He did the Cannoneer thing where he won the Latin America show at heavyweight, fought at 205, and now is at 185. Does that help you for Shoeface, or does that do anything?
Yeah, I think he's threatening. I think he's a threatening guy as long as but everybody knows it. He's going to try to submit you. He's tall enough to just reach down and grab your neck. So as long as Heinisch knows that going in, I think I like everything he said. He has good ring IQ in there. He knows exactly what he's getting into. Carlos, because he is so tall and lanky, is really telegraphed. Okay, yeah, feel good about the decision. Sorry to go back. Move on. Sorry.
Moving on to the co-main event. Again, Neil Magny falling out short notice, 4 days notice. We had Pop on the USADA. We talked about it earlier. Vincent Luque was left without an opponent. On 4 days notice, we had Derek D-Rock Krantz, an 11-year veteran, keeping on the grind, 24-10 record. He was slated to be on the Contender Series, but he had Sean Shelby call him up and say, hey, short notice, do you just want to be in the UFC now and not even do that? And Krantz said, let's do it. Good for him. He'll get another fight in here. But as far as skills, he's coming in against a monster in Vincente Luque. Luque, you know, we've been liking him for a long time. Fighting out of the Armory. Now it's the Combat Cub over.
Have you ever picked against Vincente Luque?
I think maybe I have. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I could be. No, I don't think I probably have not.
I can't wait.
I don't think I have.
If you feel like pulling it up and looking at it.
But either way, Luque's better everywhere. Striking, tons of power on the ground. Gas tank has always been a little iffy. The losses he's had in there has been because he's been able to get out wrestled in there. But against who is that? Krantz in there, it's more than likely not going to happen. Krantz, jack of all trades, master of none. Not really tons of power as well. He's able to get submitted in there. What did we want to see for Luque as well? What was that? Oh, my picking.
Yeah.
What my record is with Vincente Luque, 8-2.
That's a great record.
Pretty good record.
I thought you were pretty. And have you ever picked against him?
Let's see here.
That seems like his exact UFC record.
Yeah, I've never picked against him. Yes, I did. I picked Hayden Hassan to win the show against Vincente Luque. That's the only time I picked him against him, and he ended up winning the show. But with Luque, this guy, I mean, there's a reason he's a...
No, they were in the co-main of their season. Weren't they on Usman's season?
Was it the co-main? Did it lose on the show? They don't mark some of those because they're exhibition.
Yeah,
but
I don't really know.
Either way,
who cares? Sorry.
Either way, Luque has been put in a good form. The only really way we've seen people really get him out of there is by dragging him into that third round and just keeping that wrestling on him. But Krantz, D-Rock's got a bit of power in there. His last loss was a split decision to fighters I don't know about. He was fighting in the LFA scene for a while. Beat Crane, beat Charles. Then as of late, who did he last beat? It was the LFA, Justin Patterson, TKO. The tape I saw on Krantz, he's got heavy hands. He's a guy who's got nothing to lose in here, which we a lot of the time say are the most dangerous guys in here. Krantz actually throws a good body, a good left and right body shot back up to the head. He throws 3 and 4 punch combinations. That last TKO in LFA that you saw is actually one of the TKOs of the year. Krantz ended up throwing, I believe it was like a right shovel hook that folded Patterson on over himself. But again, that's LFA, and Patterson was 11-4. But Krantz has power in that right hand. He switches stance in there fairly well, and definitely just somebody who's has to take this shot in order to get into the UFC. At 31 years old, I think he's going to have... His next fight's going to be much lower level competition because he did them a solid, and it's going to look much more advantageous. Giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying Luque warms up, as we were saying earlier, he downloads him for that first round, but then I think Luque eventually picks his poison, where it's either going to be a TKO finish or it's the strikes that eventually set up the submission. So I got submission, but I do think that Luque hurts him with an uppercut with one of those jabs. Krantz kind of throws a sloppy shot in there, and then it's that nasty-ass darce that we usually see from Luque, how he sets it up from the outside under the armpit. But I got Luque submission, round number 2. Pretty easy to pick this one. Who do you have and why?
I don't even know where this other guy came from. I didn't know what his name was. I didn't know who he was. I only have seen a clip of one fight that he's been in, so I don't really have a lot to go on. So I had Vincente Luque anyway against Magny.
Right.
No offense to Krantz. I'm excited to see what he has. Luque could submit him, or he has nasty hands. The only fight, obviously, the Leon Edwards. And something didn't look right about Vincente Luque that night in the fight. Like, he just looked off, and it wasn't just because he got hurt. So even if this guy hurts him in the first round, because Luque does have a really great chin, even if he comes forward, Luque can still grab up that submission. It's just a very short notice. I think the end of round 1, I'm going to give him the knockout. Technical knockout. But this guy seems to have a good chin. Has he been hit by a guy like Luque? He's also good with body shots. All right. I like the submission, even just because of skill level. It's like almost if you're sparring in there against a guy that is not as good as you, I almost feel like you can take it where you want it to go. So why are you going to hurt a dude? Maybe Luque, he seemed like a nice dude.
He did seem like it. He signed our shirts.
Yeah.
Definitely a nice guy. How many fans? It was unbelievable to me how many fans we saw walk by Luque.
And for the new fans, we're talking about when we went to UFC Fort Lauderdale.
Recently, but there was just people walking by, waiting for people in line and being like, oh, there's fighters. And we're just like, there's a pro MMA fighter right there. And we just kept quiet because we didn't want to make a scene and have him walk away or whatever. Wow, you're going to see his name.
Yeah, we saw a lot of big fighters that you didn't have to wait in line for.
Definitely.
We saw just as many you didn't have to wait in line for.
Very, very, very true. But Luque's going to end up being the big favorite here. 9,400 on DraftKings against debuting Krantz 6,800. I'm going to probably be putting like 60%, maybe 70% of Luque on there. I have enough underdogs, I feel like, to be able to put those top three people I've been saying. Ramos, maybe Ladd. Ladd's the one I'm least confident in. I have Heinisch as well. Well, I guess as far as over 1,000.
I'm a Ladd Luque girl. I'm a Ladd Luque lady.
Well, that's where you're talking about them double L's.
Double L.
Wait, is that triple L?
No, we about
Ladd
to roll.
Luque lady?
No, we about to roll into that.
Oh, really? Moving on to the main event at welterweight, we have two former lightweight contenders, former lightweight champion Raphael Dos Anjos coming in at 170 pounds against Kevin Lee at 170 pounds. Lee making his first move to 170. Last losing to Ali Akinta, the 17-4 fighter, came out for the tough house at 145 pounds. Has had a couple losses in there, but really been fighting at a top level for a little while now, only losing of late to Tony Ferguson and Al in there, beating Edson Barbosa, splitting that up, but also beating Chiesa in a controversial submission. Kevin Lee, his striking has gotten better. He's been over at the Performance Institute for a little while. He's got good wrestling, but he's a power double type of guy. As I was saying earlier with Aspen Ladd, she's the type of person who moves from single to double to single to double. She hits you with that chain wrestling. Kevin Lee is not that type of guy. Kevin Lee's an explosive athlete who will throw maybe a 1 or 2 punch combination or maybe just a single shot, but he's a one big move type of guy for me. When he shoots that double leg takedown, if he doesn't get it, he backs out, resets, and moves on to other stuff. Where against the Raphael Dos Anjos type of guy, the way that his last opponents were able to beat him with a 26-11 record was Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman, both chain wrestlers, both guys that get in there and are able to fight the fence once you get back up to the fence and able to really control you, where Lee can do that against lower level guys, but we haven't really seen it against the highest yet. Well, we kind of did see it against the higher end in Ali Akinta decision, where Al pretty much boxed them up the entire time for Lee. But Raphael Dos Anjos can use his wrestling in reverse. He has actually good takedown defense. He does get taken down, but on the ground, he's a X-level black belt. He's already fought multiple times at 170 pounds. He was outsized, though, by Colby Covington and Usman. And in this fight, he's not going to have that size because Lee's also moving up. So I think that they're going to be body type a little more matched up. I am interested to see what Lee looks like because he does walk around at like 190, but so does Dos Anjos over that 200 level. Already talking about how easy the weight cut is. I do think that the low leg kicks as well can work for Dos Anjos. I think he throws a good calf kick, and that could end up playing a big role for him. Striking-wise, slight advantage for Dos Anjos. I don't think Kevin Lee has tons of power in there. I see this turning into a hard-fought 5-rounder. I can't really give the edge to any specific guy other than on the ground. I do think that Dos Anjos would surprise Kevin Lee on the ground, even off of his back, because he's just that credentialed. Striking-wise, Dos Anjos has good Muay Thai. I got Dos Anjos' decision. I'm a little tentative on this one. I think there's a lot of other spots. I think this is pretty much a coin flip for me. I don't see anything
the
two-way.
line's right here.
Yeah, the line's 100% right. Minus 125, Dos Anjos. Minus 105, Lee. Both of these guys coming in as essentially favorites on the money line. Give me Dos Anjos 5-round decision. It's a 5-rounder, so you got to have some exposure to it. Either guy here, because they're going to rack up points. They both have good outputs, for that matter. Who do you have in this fight, and why?
A weird thing for me is if you look at it, you could say Raphael Dos Anjos can beat Kevin Lee exactly how Al Iaquinta beat Kevin Lee. But then you can also look at it and say Kevin Lee can beat Raphael Dos Anjos exactly like Usman and Colby Covington beat Raphael Dos Anjos. So I kind of go back and forth, and I'm just giving it to the kid here. I got to think we've seen a depleted version of Kevin Lee, and that cut was getting harder and harder and harder for him to make. That being said, remembering Al Iaquinta on that fight with Donald Cerrone, Donald just looked enormous to Al, and Al handled Kevin Lee everywhere. Gosh, is Raphael going to look that good too? Kevin Lee does have the reach advantage here. I just think Dos Anjos does have the better hand. If Kevin Lee does what he knows, if he does wrestle, I think he can win this fight. He does burn out, though, where Raphael Dos Anjos gets stronger as the fight goes on. I think the hands are better. The cardio is better. Really, I just think it's the wrestling, the takedowns, and the age for Kevin Lee. Oh, that isn't great. And I think Kevin Lee is kind of one of those guys that talked himself in this position, but I also think the guys that Dos Anjos was beating before, Neil Magny and Robbie Lawler and then Safadine, are like, they make me kind of shrug a little bit, whereas Kevin Lee talked himself into some monster fights, and I could see Edson Barboza being a faster version of Dos Anjos at this point. Same leg kick, same striking, kind of similar dudes in a way. I'm going to go with Kevin Lee here. I'm going to go... Oh, it almost has to be submission round 2, or Dos Anjos ekes out the decision to me.
Interesting.
I'm going to go submission round 2.
I think the line's right on here. I
go back and forth on this. This is a really great fight. And I made a comment earlier in the week on Twitter of like, does every guy that walks into the 170 have to fight Dos Anjos?
The truth. That is the truth. He's just a gatekeeper essentially at 170, even though he's fought at 55 pretty much his whole career. Raphael Dos Anjos being the slight favorite on DraftKings, 8,200 against Kevin Lee's 8,000.
You got the effing game plan. If Kevin Lee doesn't have the smart enough ring IQ at his age right now to figure out that the game plan's right laid out for him in 2 other fights, I even think Kevin Lee could sneak up and have better hands than Usman. I haven't been impressed by Usman's hands in a while, so... Ugh.
Interesting. How much do you think you're going to end up playing Kevin Lee for 8,000?
40%.
Are you going to put Dos Anjos anywhere?
3-round fight.
5.
Maybe on is it? Oh yeah, this is the main event.
Right. That's why I'm saying you got to slate one of these guys. If not a stack, I don't even know though. I don't think a stack here because I don't. The
longer the fight goes on, the more it freaks me out for Kevin Lee.
I agree with that. That's why I think I'm going to play at 8-2 Dos Anjos. But like you're saying, I'm going to probably do 20% Lee and 40% Dos Anjos, maybe 50% Dos Anjos. But yeah, I'm going to be tentative. Most 5-round fights I'm all about. I think Dos Anjos might have a better output. A little better output.
Yeah, I'm putting both guys on cards.
Yep.
I'm even switching it to Lee submission round 3.
Definitely a fun night of fights that we have underway. We have underdogs from left to right. If you're following us, you're going to end up having free bets coming along the way. We've been dabbling in some of those prop bets here and there. That might be the best way to make some of this money with some of these inflated lines that we've seen throughout the night. So I kind of see some going more decision-y, but we can talk about it on Twitter. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you can. Thank you very much for following us wherever you can.
Yeah, that's it. I think you've said it all.
That's supposed to be.
Oh, it's
Let me.
Yeah. Hey.